I sold my online business for $18 million and decided to celebrate with my husband and mother-in-law. I booked the best restaurant in town. While they went outside to talk, a waiter rushed over and said, "I saw her put something in your purse." So I got up and left. My name is Jessica Morgan. I'm 38 years old, and 3 hours after I signed the final documents selling my online business for $18 million, my husband looked across a white tablecloth and told me I should be grateful he had allowed me to succeed. We were at Astor House, the hardest reservation to get in San Francisco, with his mother, Christina Brooks. I had spent 6 years building a software company from a cramped Silicon Valley office with stained carpet and a coffee machine that sounded like farm equipment. The sale agreement had been signed at 3:17 that afternoon. Christina raised her champagne glass and smiled. $18 million, she said. Not bad for a little website Daniel supported while you played entrepreneur. 3 people at the next table heard her. So did our waiter. Daniel laughed. I didn't. I simply folded my napkin. 10 minutes later, Daniel and Christina went outside to discuss something private. That was when our waiter hurried back. His name was Kevin Sullivan. He looked genuinely nervous. "Ma'am," he whispered, "I don't know what's going on, but I saw her put something in your purse." My purse was hanging from the back of my chair. Christina had spent the entire evening mocking that purse. I looked at it, then at Kevin, and for some reason I still can't fully explain, I didn't open it. I paid the $684 bill, took my purse, thanked him, and walked out the kitchen entrance, because 2 weeks earlier, Daniel had said something I hadn't understood at the time. If you ever force people into a corner, Jessica, don't be surprised by what they do. By midnight, I finally understood, and what Christina had slipped into my purse would eventually cost both of them far more than they ever planned to take from me. Welcome back to my channel. If you've ever had someone mistake your patience for permission, you probably already know where stories like this begin. Subscribe if you'd like to hear the rest, because I need to go back about 6 years. I founded Q-Lane when I was 32. Technically, the company began at my kitchen table. But 6 months later, I rented 2 rooms in a little Silicon Valley office building between a dental lab and an accounting software company. Q-Lane wasn't glamorous. It helped independent home service businesses manage online scheduling, customer payments, route changes, repeat appointments, and cancellations. Plumbers, electricians, HVAC companies, landscapers, people who couldn't afford expensive enterprise software but were tired of running their businesses through text messages and yellow legal pads. I built the first version with 2 engineers and $86,000 of my own savings. Daniel and I were dating then. He worked in brand consulting, or, as he once described it, I make people want things they don't know they want. Daniel was handsome, funny, socially effortless, and very good at making a room feel like it had improved because he entered it. I was the opposite. I liked spreadsheets. I liked quiet. I could spend 20 minutes comparing 2 versions of the same contract clause and consider it a productive afternoon. At first, Daniel said he loved that about me. "You actually finish things," he'd tell me. When Q-Lane signed its first 100 paying customers, Daniel brought a bottle of grocery store champagne to my office. He had written, "We're rich" on it in black marker. We were not rich. That month, I paid myself $3,200. Still, I kept the bottle. When we got married the following year, Q-Lane was valued at a little under $900,000. My attorney recommended a prenup because I already owned the company. Daniel barely looked at it. "Jess," he said, tossing the draft onto the kitchen counter, "I don't want your company," he signed. That sentence came back to me many times. I don't want your company. There are some sentences you don't recognize as expensive until years later. Christina entered my life slowly. She was a widow, well-dressed, always perfectly organized, and devoted to the idea that the Brooks family was unusually refined. Christina could turn an insult into something that sounded like concern. At our wedding, she told me I looked surprisingly elegant for someone who works with computers. At Thanksgiving, when I brought dessert from a bakery because I had worked until midnight the night before, she said, "Career women have to make their compromises somewhere." Daniel would squeeze my knee under the table. Ignore her, so I did. That became our marriage in miniature. Christina insulted, Daniel explained. I absorbed. For the first 2 years, Q-Lane struggled. Then it didn't. A regional plumbing franchise adopted our software. Then a national repair company. Then an industry association recommended us to its members. Revenue climbed from $410,000 to $1.7 million. Then to $4.30 million. I hired carefully. I didn't buy a sports car. I didn't move us into some glass mansion in the hills. I paid off my student loans. I increased salaries. I started a proper emergency fund. And I bought one thing for myself, a black leather work tote for $240. I bought it the week we crossed $1 million in annual recurring revenue. I remember Daniel looking at the receipt. $240? He laughed. For a purse? I'll use it every day. You're building a tech company and carrying something my aunt would take on a bus. I laughed too. Back then, it sounded harmless. That was the purse Christina would eventually put something into. Daniel's attitude toward Q-Lane changed around the time we crossed $5 million in revenue. He started introducing himself as someone who had helped build the company. At parties, he'd say things like, "Jessica handles the technical side. I help with positioning." He did not. Daniel had never worked for Q-Lane. I had once asked him to review our homepage copy. He emailed back 3 sentences. 2 contained typos. I thanked him anyway. Then his mother started doing it. At Christina's 65th birthday dinner, one of her friends asked how my company was doing. Before I answered, Christina said, "Daniel practically raised that business with her." I smiled. Daniel smiled. Nobody corrected her. Afterward, in the car, I said, "That was strange." "What was?" "Your mother saying you practically raised Q-Lane." He stared through the windshield. "She was being nice. She was giving you credit for my company." "Jesus, Jessica." He turned toward me. "Do you need every compliment in the room?" That shut me up. Not because he was right, because I was tired. Running Q-Lane meant I was making hundreds of decisions every week. A marriage shouldn't have felt like another department I had to manage. So I chose peace. Or what I thought was peace. The first time money became an open issue was 18 months before the sale. Christina called on a Tuesday afternoon. She had received a property tax adjustment and said she needed $28,640 within 3 weeks. Daniel had apparently already told her I could help. I was sitting in my Silicon Valley office with 14 unread messages on Slack and a contract renewal open on my second monitor. "Daniel said you'd cover it," Christina told me. Not asked. Told. I said, "He didn't discuss it with me." There was silence. Then she laughed lightly. "You two are married." "I know." "Then I'm not sure why he needs permission to discuss family money." Family money. That phrase bothered me. Q-Lane money was company money. My salary was our household money, but somehow Christina had blended all of it into one large imaginary bowl. I told her I would talk to Daniel. That evening, he was furious. "My mother is 65. And she needs help." I didn't say we couldn't help. I said, "You don't promise $28,000 of my money without asking." His face hardened. "Your money?" "Daniel?" "No." "That's interesting. We have joint accounts. Q-Lane shares are separate because you signed an agreement saying they were separate. So I supported you for 6 years and I get a technicality." There it was. Not a joke. Not a misunderstanding. A grievance. I transferred Christina $10,000 as a gift. She didn't thank me. Daniel didn't either. He said, "She needed 28, I said. "Then perhaps you can give her the other 18. He didn't speak to me for 2 days. Things changed after that. Small things first. Daniel stopped asking about work unless money was involved. He wanted to know our valuation. He wanted to know whether investors had approached us. He wanted to know what happened to founder shares in an acquisition. Once, I came downstairs at 11 at night and found him looking through a folder I kept in the desk beside our printer. "What are you doing?" He closed it. "Looking for the mortgage statement. That folder says Q-Lane." I grabbed the wrong one. The mortgage folder was blue. Q-Lane's was red. "I noticed?" I said nothing. 3 months later, I got the first acquisition offer. $28 million. I remember staring at the number and feeling absolutely nothing for about 30 seconds. Then I cried. Not because I wanted a yacht, because 6 years of fear suddenly had a number attached to it. I had missed vacations. I had eaten dinner over a keyboard. I had once slept under my desk during a software migration. $28 million meant the work had been real. The buyer was a larger software company called Northline Systems. We entered preliminary diligence. Everything looked good. Then, 11 days before our board planned to vote, Northline received an anonymous email. The sender claimed I had deliberately hidden customer churn. They claimed I manipulated renewal statistics. They claimed 2 of our largest accounts were preparing to cancel. None of it was true, but it was specific enough that Northline stopped the deal. They ordered additional diligence. Our employees panicked. Rumors spread. One of my senior people resigned because he thought an investigation meant something ugly must be coming. I had to stand in our conference room in front of 47 employees and tell them I had not falsified anything. I can still remember the fluorescent lights. I remember somebody's half-eaten salad on the conference table. I remember my hands shaking behind my back. The review lasted 9 weeks. It cleared me completely. But Northline walked away anyway. Their CEO told me the deal had become too noisy. The company survived. I did too. But something in me cracked. That was the worst professional period of my life. Daniel watched me cry on our bathroom floor one night. I said, "Someone wanted to hurt me." He crouched beside me. "You can't know that. They sent fake internal numbers. Competitors do ugly things. What if it was somebody close enough to know what numbers would sound believable?" Daniel hugged me. "Stop torturing yourself." I trusted that hug for almost 2 years. That might be the hardest part to explain. You can survive an enemy. It's much harder to find out later that the person comforting you may have known exactly why you were hurting. Q-Lane recovered. I became quieter, more careful. I hired outside security. I changed passwords. I stopped discussing negotiations at home. Daniel noticed. He called me paranoid. But 16 months after the Northline disaster, another buyer approached us. Bright Circle Holdings. Their first offer was $14 million. We negotiated. 15.5, 16.8. Finally, $18 million. It was less than the old offer. But the terms were clean. Our employees were protected for 12 months. Our senior team received retention bonuses. And I was ready. Not desperate. Ready. The night I told Daniel we were accepting, he opened a bottle of wine. Then he asked one question. "How much do we get?" "Not you, not congratulations. How much do we get?" I said. "The purchase price is $18 million. Taxes, transaction costs, employee obligations and the small investor pool come out before anything reaches me." He frowned. "And my part?" I thought he was joking. "What part?" He stared at me. "Jessica, the company is separate property." "That's not what I asked." "What are you asking? How much are you planning to give me?" I put down my glass. "Give you? I've been married to this business too." "No, Daniel. You've been married to me. Same difference for 6 years." It was such a cold sentence that I actually laughed, not because it was funny. Because sometimes your brain needs somewhere to put shock. He told me he expected $6 million. $6 million? I asked how he arrived at that number. "Roughly a third of a company you never worked for? Of the life I helped make possible? You signed a prenup." "I signed that when the company was worth nothing. It was worth almost $900,000. To me, that's basically nothing compared to this." I looked at him. He realized what he'd said. But he didn't take it back. I told him there would be no $6 million gift. I also told him I was willing to pay off the remaining $612,000 on our house and put an additional $250,000 into our joint investment account after taxes. That was more than fair to me. To Daniel, it was an insult. $800,000. He shook his head. "After I gave you 6 years. You didn't give me 6 years. We were married." "Exactly. Marriage had become an invoice." That weekend Christina came over. She brought lemon cookies. Christina always brought food when she intended to behave badly. She waited until Daniel was outside, taking a phone call. Then she sat across from me at the kitchen table. "Men have pride," she said. "So do women." "I knew you'd say something like that." "Then why start?" She folded her hands. "Daniel feels you've benefited from the marriage more than he has." I almost admired the sentence. "You mean financially?" I mean in every way. Christina, if Daniel wants to discuss our marriage, he can discuss it with me. He does. You turn everything into a contract. I run a company. You're his wife first. No, I'm a person first. Her smile disappeared. That was the first time I saw something underneath Christina's polished expression. Not anger. Ownership. You should be careful, she said. With what? Making your husband feel disposable. I leaned back. He's asking me for $6 million. And you can afford it. That answer told me everything. Not what they thought was fair. What they believed I could be forced to surrender. 2 days before the sale closed, Daniel slid a folder across our dining table. Inside was a proposed postnuptial agreement. He said it would put all the resentment behind us. The agreement would give him 35% of my net sale proceeds. It would also waive several rights under our original prenup. I looked at the first page. Then at him. Who drafted this? A lawyer? Your lawyer? A family lawyer. Name? He hesitated. That was enough. I closed the folder. No. You didn't read it. I read enough. Jessica, this is exactly the problem. What problem? You make every decision. About my company? About our life. You are trying to change an agreement you willingly signed after my company became valuable. His jaw tightened. You think you're smarter than everybody. No. I think I'm reading page 1. He snatched the folder. Then he said the sentence that stayed in my head at Astor House. If you ever force people into a corner, Jessica, don't be surprised by what they do, I said. Is that a threat? He laughed. You hear yourself? I wish I could say I immediately knew my marriage was over. I didn't. That's another uncomfortable truth. You can recognize danger intellectually before your heart agrees to it. The sale closed on Friday, August 7th. I arrived at my Silicon Valley office before 6 that morning. At 3:17 p.m., the last signature was completed. $18 million. The wire itself would move after final escrow reconciliation. My employees opened champagne. Someone brought a cake with our terrible first logo printed on top. I cried when I saw it. My first engineer hugged me. My operations director said, "You actually did it." Those words meant more to me than the purchase price. You did it. Not we own it. Not what do I get. You did it. I wanted one peaceful evening. That sounds naive now. I made the reservation at Astor House for 7:30. I invited Daniel. He invited Christina without asking. I nearly canceled when he told me. Instead I thought, fine. One dinner. Maybe we could all behave like normal adults for 2 hours. I wore a navy dress. I carried my old black leather tote. Daniel looked at it before we left. You're bringing that thing? It holds things. You sold a company for $18 million. And somehow the zipper still works. He rolled his eyes. Christina noticed it too. At the restaurant, she tapped one manicured fingernail against the handle. I suppose some people stay humble by force? It's a purse, Christina. Of course. Dinner began politely. For 15 minutes, then Daniel ordered a $420 bottle of champagne without asking. Christina toasted, family success. Daniel corrected her. Our success. I said nothing. Then Christina made the comment about my little website. Daniel laughed. That was when something inside me went quiet, not angry. Finished. A few minutes later Daniel checked his phone. Christina looked at hers. He said, Mom, can I talk to you outside? They left together. I thought they were probably discussing me. I was right. I just didn't know how literally. Kevin appeared less than a minute later. He had been refilling water at the service station behind us. Ma'am? He glanced toward the patio doors. I don't mean to interfere. What is it? The older woman. My mother-in-law. Yes. He lowered his voice. When she got up, she walked behind your chair. She put something inside your bag. I looked at the tote. The zipper was open about 3 inches. I always closed it. What did it look like? Small. Dark red, maybe. Like a jewelry pouch. My stomach tightened. Did you see exactly what it was? No. Did anyone else? One of our runners may have. But I definitely did. I looked toward the patio. Daniel's back was visible through the glass. Christina stood close to him. Neither was looking at me. That detail mattered. I asked Kevin for his full name. Then I said, "Can you do me a favor?" "Yes. Don't tell them you spoke to me." His eyebrows lifted. "Okay, and can you ask your manager to preserve whatever security footage exists around this table?" Now he looked alarmed. "Ma'am? Should I call security?" Not yet. I didn't know what was in my purse. But I knew I did not want Daniel standing beside me when I discovered it. I paid the bill. I took a photo of the receipt showing 8:54 p.m., then I left through the kitchen corridor. Kevin walked me to the side exit. He gave me the restaurant manager's card. I got into a rideshare. 3 minutes later, Daniel called. I let it ring. Then Christina. Then Daniel again. By the time I reached my office, I had 14 texts. "Where are you? What the hell? Mom is humiliated. You left us at the restaurant? Jessica, answer me." Then, at 9:23, "Something is missing from Mom's purse." I sat at my desk and stared at that sentence. A few seconds later, another arrived. Her diamond bracelet. "Do you have it?" There it was. I felt strangely calm, the same calm I felt during software outages. Once you know what the failure is, panic becomes inefficient. I placed my tote on the conference table. I turned on my phone camera. Then I opened it. Underneath my wallet was a dark red velvet pouch. I had never seen it before. I filmed myself removing it. Inside was a diamond bracelet, Christina's. I recognized it immediately. She wore it constantly. She claimed Daniel's father had given it to her on their 20th anniversary. She had once told me it was insured for more than $70,000. I did not touch the bracelet itself. I put the pouch back exactly where I found it. Then I called Laura McCarthy. Laura was not my divorce attorney. At that point, I didn't have one. She was outside counsel for Q-Lane, and she had spent 18 months reminding me that important problems rarely improve because you avoid documenting them. She answered on the 4th ring. "Jessica? Sorry. Is something wrong with the closing?" "No." I looked at my purse. "I think my mother-in-law just planted an expensive bracelet in my bag." There was a long pause. Then Laura said, "Do not go home." That was the first instruction. The second was to email her copies of every text. The third was not to respond to Daniel until she called back. 20 minutes later, Laura had connected me with an attorney who handled family law and related civil issues. Her name was Angela Harrison. Angela asked concise questions. "Was the bracelet mine?" "No." "Had I touched it?" "Only the pouch." "Was there a witness?" "Yes." "Possible video?" "Yes." "Had Christina accused me directly?" "Not yet." "Good," Angela said. I didn't understand. "Good?" "She hasn't committed to her story." At 10:08, Christina committed. She sent me a text. "Jessica, my bracelet disappeared during dinner. Daniel says you left suddenly. Please return it tonight, and I will consider this a private family misunderstanding." I read that twice. Angela said, "Don't answer." 10 minutes later, Daniel called again. This time, Angela told me to record notes of what was said, not secretly record the call without checking applicable law. I answered, "Where are you?" "My office." "Do you have my mother's bracelet?" "Why would I have your mother's bracelet?" Silence. Then he sighed. "Jessica, don't make this worse." My skin went cold. What exactly am I making worse? Mom is upset. That doesn't answer me. She knows she had it at dinner. Does she? Yes. How? She remembers. Then she should contact the restaurant. Daniel's voice changed, lower, impatient. "Can you just come home?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to." "Jessica." I ended the call. At 10:41 p.m., Housana called the police. I know the exact time because it appeared later in the report. She told them she believed I had stolen her bracelet during dinner. She said she had removed it briefly because the clasp bothered her wrist. She said she placed it inside her handbag. She said I had admired it several times. That last part almost made me laugh. I had once told Christina the bracelet looked difficult to clean. Apparently that was admiration. I spent the night in a hotel, not a fancy one. The nearest business hotel to my office. I paid $189 and slept maybe 40 minutes. Saturday morning, Kevin called. The restaurant manager had preserved the video. There were 2 relevant cameras. One showed our table from an angle, the other covered the service corridor. The table camera was not perfect, but it was good enough. At 8:49 p.m., Christina stood up. Daniel walked toward the patio. Christina waited. She looked directly at me. I was reading something on my phone, then she stepped behind my chair. Her hand disappeared into my purse. 2 seconds. Maybe 3. She followed Daniel outside. Kevin crossed behind her carrying water glasses. He turned his head. You could actually see him notice. I watched the clip 5 times. I did not feel victorious. I felt sick. Because there is a difference between suspecting someone dislikes you and watching them manufacture a crime around you. Angela arranged for the bracelet to be transferred appropriately, so its custody was documented. I gave a statement. Kevin gave one too. The restaurant provided the video. I thought that would end it. I was wrong. Daniel and Christina had apparently prepared for a version of events where I fought back. On Sunday evening, Daniel emailed me a PDF. The subject line was resolution. Attached was the postnuptial agreement again. This time there was also a message. Mom is willing to tell the police she may have been mistaken about when the bracelet disappeared, but this situation shows how broken things have become between us. Sign the agreement, and we can keep this from becoming uglier. I forwarded it to Angela. She called within 3 minutes. Do not respond. I wasn't going to. Jessica, this is important. I know. No. I mean very important. She read the email again. They just connected the bracelet allegation to the financial agreement in writing. I sat on the hotel bed. For the first time all weekend, I smiled. It wasn't happiness. It was recognition. They had become so certain I would panic that they had stopped being careful. Daniel believed silence meant fear. Christina believed politeness meant weakness. Neither understood that my entire professional life had trained me to save records before reacting. Monday morning brought another surprise. The officer handling Christina's report called Angela. There was a timing issue. Christina had told police she realized the bracelet was missing around 9:15 Friday night, but she had contacted her jewelry insurer before then. Not after midnight, not Saturday. At 8:57 p.m., 3 minutes after I paid the restaurant bill, and several minutes before Daniel sent his first text saying anything was missing, Christina had opened an online claim through her insurer's portal. While she was still outside with Daniel, the claim described the bracelet as lost or stolen. It listed Astor House. It estimated the loss at $78,500, and it was submitted before she supposedly knew the bracelet was gone. That was the moment the situation stopped looking like a family dispute. The insurance company opened its own investigation. Daniel came home Monday afternoon and discovered I had removed my personal documents, medication, laptop, grandmother's ring, and enough clothing for 2 weeks. I had also changed the passwords on my private financial accounts. He called. Are you leaving me? I looked around my hotel room. Yes. You're destroying our marriage over a misunderstanding. I laughed once. A misunderstanding doesn't usually have an insurance claim number. Silence. A very long silence. How do you know about that? There are moments when people reveal more by asking the wrong question. I said, Goodbye, Daniel. Then I blocked him. The next 3 weeks were ugly. Not loud. Ugly. Daniel retained an attorney. He filed for divorce before I could. Then he requested temporary orders restricting movement of certain marital funds. He claimed I had become secretive after the company sale. He described himself as a spouse who had sacrificed professional opportunities to support my entrepreneurial career. I nearly choked reading that. Daniel had changed jobs twice during our marriage, both times for higher salaries. He had taken a 3-week trip to Portugal with friends, while I was preparing Q-Lane's Series A materials. His sacrifice was apparently having to explain to strangers that his wife worked late. Christina began telling relatives that I had suffered a breakdown from money pressure. One cousin messaged me, I'm hearing concerning things. Hope you're okay. I replied, I'm fine. Thank you for checking. Nothing else. I stopped defending myself socially. That was difficult. When someone lies about you, every instinct says correct the record. But Angela told me something useful. People who matter will eventually see evidence. People who don't matter can survive being wrong for a few weeks. So I waited. Daniel didn't. He called mutual friends. He contacted 2 former Q-Lane employees. He even emailed Bright Circle's transaction team, claiming there was a marital ownership dispute affecting the acquisition proceeds. That was his next mistake. The sale had already closed. The purchase agreement was final. The prenup had been reviewed during diligence. The payment structure was clear. Bright Circle forwarded his email to counsel. Their lawyers responded once. Then they stopped responding. Daniel was furious. I heard through a mutual friend that he had said, "Jessica has everybody trained." No. Jessica had documents. There is a difference. About a month after the restaurant dinner, we had a settlement conference. Daniel wanted it. His attorney wanted it more. By then, the restaurant video had been provided in the relevant proceedings. The police had Christina's original report. Her insurer had the 8/57 claim timestamped. And Angela had Daniel's email linking his mother's willingness to change her theft story to my signature on the postnuptial agreement. I assumed that was the whole story. It should have been enough. It wasn't. The conference took place in a downtown office, with glass walls, terrible coffee, and the kind of beige carpet designed to make everyone confess just to go home. Daniel sat across from me. I hadn't seen him in 5 weeks. He looked thinner. Christina sat beside him. She wore pearls. No bracelet. For reasons I still find almost funny. That was the first thing I noticed. Daniel's attorney began by saying everyone hoped for a respectful resolution. Angela looked at me. I kept my face still. Daniel wanted $4.2 million from the sale. He had reduced his demand from 6. Apparently this was generosity. His attorney framed it as compensation for Daniel's contributions during marriage. Angela referred him to the prenup. His attorney argued circumstances had changed. Angela referred him to the prenup again. Eventually Christina leaned forward. "This isn't only about money," Angela said. "Then perhaps you can explain what it is about." Christina looked directly at me. "Character." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Even he knew she shouldn't continue. Christina did anyway. Jessica walked out of a restaurant with my property in her purse. There it was. The lie. Again. Publicly. With attorneys present. With the record sitting inches away. Angela didn't raise her voice. "Are you stating that Jessica knowingly took your bracelet?" Christina said. "Yes." Her attorney touched her arm. She pulled away. Daniel said, "Mom?" Christina snapped. "She did." Angela opened her laptop. "Then I think we should watch something." The room became very quiet. She played the Astor House video. No dramatic music. No perfect camera angle. Just 30 seconds of ordinary surveillance footage. Daniel walking toward the patio. Christina pausing behind my chair. Her hand entering my purse. Kevin turning. Christina leaving. Angela stopped the video. Nobody spoke. Christina's face changed. Not much. That was what made it memorable. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. Daniel stared at the table. His attorney removed his glasses. Finally, Christina said, "I was putting something back." Angela asked, "What?" Christina hesitated. "A cosmetic item." "In Jessica's purse?" I was confused. "At 8:49 p.m.? No answer. Angela placed the police report on the table. "You told police you placed the bracelet in your own handbag," Christina said. I was upset. Then, at 8:57, you filed an insurance claim reporting the bracelet lost or stolen. Christina looked at her attorney. Her attorney looked furious. Daniel spoke. "This is getting ridiculous." Angela turned toward him. "You're right. It is." She opened his email, the one labeled resolution. She read one sentence. "Mom is willing to tell the police she may have been mistaken, sign the agreement, and we can keep this from becoming uglier." Daniel's face went red. "That was taken out of context." I spoke for the first time. "What context improves it?" He looked at me. For 6 years I had seen Daniel annoyed, charming, drunk, worried, affectionate, arrogant, playful, exhausted. I had never seen him afraid. Until then. His attorney asked for a short recess. We took one. Angela and I moved into a smaller conference room. I thought the worst was over. Then she closed the door. "There is something else." I looked at her. "What?" The insurance investigator obtained communications Christina voluntarily provided before she retained counsel. I sat down. Angela's expression was strange. Careful. "There are messages between her and Daniel." "About the bracelet?" Yes. She paused. And something else. My stomach tightened. Angela slid 3 printed pages across the table. Most of the messages were from the days before the restaurant. Daniel had written, "She won't sign unless she thinks she has something to lose." Christina answered, "You said pressure worked before." Daniel? Different situation. Christina. The email worked. It killed the 28M deal, and she never knew. I stopped breathing. For several seconds, the room seemed very far away. I read the line again. The email worked. It killed the 28M deal. I looked at Angela. What email? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. I knew. The anonymous accusation. Northline. The conference room, 47 employees. 9 weeks of forensic review. My senior manager quitting. Me crying on the bathroom floor while Daniel held me. I turned to the next page. Christina. You told me she needed to be brought down before she'd listen. Daniel? She was getting impossible. Christina. And now she's selling for 10 less anyway. Daniel? Exactly. She should remember what happens when she shuts me out. I put the pages down. My hands were shaking so hard, they made a faint sound against the table. Angela said, "Jessica." I looked at her. I told him I thought somebody close to me had done it. She said nothing. He hugged me. That was the sentence that broke me. Not 28 million. Not 18 million. Not 6 million. He hugged me. I remembered Daniel on the bathroom tile. His hand behind my neck. Stop torturing yourself. He had watched me blame competitors, investors, former employees, myself. And all that time he knew. The investigator had not yet established exactly how Daniel sent the anonymous email that came later. But the messages were enough to show Christina believed he had done it, and Daniel didn't correct her. Further forensic work eventually traced the account to a privacy service purchased using a card linked to one of Daniel's consulting entities. He had used figures he found in the red Q-Lane folder, the folder he'd claimed he confused with the mortgage file. That tiny moment from years earlier finally had an explanation. The failed acquisition had not been random sabotage. Daniel had wanted me scared. He thought a weakened company meant a more controllable wife. He believed if Q-Lane became unstable, I would depend on him. Instead, I rebuilt it, and when I sold for 18 million without giving him control, he tried again, different weapon, same strategy. Make Jessica afraid. Offer Jessica relief. Collect payment. Angela asked whether I wanted to continue the conference. I said yes. I went back into that beige room. Daniel was whispering to his attorney. Christina was drinking water. Neither looked at me. I sat down. Then I placed the printed messages in front of Daniel. He saw the first page. His entire body changed. There are truths people deny. And then there are truths they recognize. His shoulders dropped. His eyes moved toward his mother. Christina whispered, "Daniel," he snapped. "Why did you give them your phone?" That was his answer. Not "I didn't do this." Not "those messages are fake." "Why did you give them your phone?" His attorney closed his eyes. Angela said, "I think we're done discussing a financial payment to Daniel from Jessica's separate business proceeds." Daniel looked at me. "Jess?" I had imagined this moment in different forms after reading those messages. I imagined yelling. I imagined asking why. Instead, I heard myself speak very quietly. "You sat on the bathroom floor with me." His face twisted. "Jessica, I can explain. You held me while I cried about what you did. It wasn't supposed to become that big." Christina said, "Daniel, stop." He ignored her. "I thought they'd renegotiate. You accused me of fraud. Anonymously." I almost laughed, as if that improved it. He leaned toward me. "I was angry. You were shutting me out of everything. It was my company. We were married. That did not make you an owner. You treated me like I didn't matter. So you tried to destroy something I built?" "I didn't try to destroy it. You killed a $28 million acquisition. It wasn't worth 28. The room went silent. Daniel realized immediately what he had said. Angela didn't even need to respond. His own attorney whispered, "Daniel," but he was unraveling. People like Daniel are very composed when they control the story. Once they lose control, they don't become cleverer. They become louder. "You all act like she's some innocent person," he said. "Do you know what it's like being married to someone who doesn't need you?" That sentence stayed with me. Not because it hurt, because it explained him. Daniel had not wanted partnership. He wanted dependency. My independence felt like rejection. My success felt like disobedience. Christina had spent years teaching him that love meant making yourself useful to someone powerful. So when he couldn't be useful to my company, he decided to become necessary to my survival. He created the wound, then offered himself as the bandage. The settlement conference ended 30 minutes later. There was no deal. There didn't need to be. Daniel withdrew his claim for a share of the Q-Lane proceeds within 2 weeks. His attorneys likely explained what continuing would expose him to. The prenup stood. The $18 million sale did not magically put $18 million in my personal checking account. Taxes existed. Fees existed. Employee obligations existed. Reality remained reality. But what remained mine, remained mine. Daniel received his proper share of genuinely marital property. Half the net equity in our house. His retirement assets. His car. Furniture he suddenly cared very deeply about. I didn't fight over the furniture. He took the expensive dining table. I took the coffee grinder. I believe I won that exchange. The criminal and insurance matters moved separately. I won't pretend they resolved overnight. Real consequences rarely arrive with dramatic music. They come as certified letters, attorney invoices, depositions, canceled policies, court dates. Months later, Christina entered a plea related to the false report and attempted insurance fraud. She received probation, financial penalties, restitution obligations, and a record she could not explain away as a family misunderstanding. The insurer canceled her policy. Her name also disappeared from the board of a local charity, where she had spent years cultivating an image of impeccable respectability. That loss hurt her more than the money. Christina cared deeply about rooms where people admired her. Those rooms became smaller. Daniel's consequences were different. The anonymous Northline email became part of a broader civil dispute tied to the damage he had caused. Northline wasn't interested in reopening an old acquisition, but Q-Lane's records documented substantial costs from the false accusations. More importantly, Bright Circle learned exactly what Daniel had attempted during its completed transaction. So did several people in his professional network. Daniel had built a career around trust, reputation, and brand strategy. It turns out clients become nervous when your own brand includes, tried to manipulate wife's company and frame her during divorce. His largest client ended their contract. Another followed. I didn't call them. I didn't leak anything. I didn't have to. Daniel had spent weeks putting his accusations into official records. Once those records met the evidence, he had created his own biography. That was the part he never understood. I didn't destroy him. I stopped protecting him from the consequences of what he had done. The divorce became final 9 months after the dinner at Astor House. I didn't celebrate. That surprised people. My friends wanted champagne. They wanted dinner. They wanted me to burn my wedding dress, which seemed both expensive and environmentally unnecessary. Instead, I went home to the townhouse I had rented 20 minutes from my old Silicon Valley office. Bright Circle kept the office after the acquisition. I stayed on for a 6-month transition, and then left. For the first time since I was 32, I woke up without checking company metrics. It was unsettling. Then wonderful. I bought plants. I killed 2 of them. I learned that being good at software does not transfer to basil. I started cooking dinner before 8. I took long walks without AirPods. I called people because I wanted to talk, not because something needed fixing. The hardest part wasn't losing Daniel. The hardest part was grieving the version of him I thought had existed. The man with the grocery store champagne bottle, the man who once stayed up until 2 in the morning, helping me assemble desks for our first employees. The man who signed a prenup and said, "I don't want your company." Some of that may have been real. That's what makes betrayal difficult. People imagine villains wear the same face every day. They don't. Sometimes someone can genuinely love you in one moment and resent you in another. Sometimes resentment grows. Sometimes entitlement grows faster. And sometimes a person makes one cruel choice, then another, until protecting the lie becomes more important than protecting you. I spent months replaying my marriage, looking for the exact moment Daniel became capable of what he did. Eventually, I stopped. There was no answer that would give me those years back. So I started asking a different question. What do I want the next 6 years to feel like? Quiet was part of the answer. So was ownership. Not financial ownership, personal ownership. My mornings, my decisions, my friendships, my mistakes, my peace. One Saturday, about 11 months after the restaurant dinner, I was cleaning out a closet when I found my old black leather tote, the purse. I hadn't used it since the night Christina planted the bracelet. For months, I couldn't look at it without seeing the red velvet pouch. I almost threw it away. Then I noticed the handle. The leather was worn smooth where my hand had carried it through 6 years of airports, investor meetings, product launches, payroll emergencies, bad coffee, good news, and terrible news. Daniel had mocked it because it wasn't expensive enough. Christina had used it because she thought it was an easy place to hide a lie. But that bag had been with me before either of them decided my success belonged to them. I took it to a repair shop. The owner replaced the zipper. $48. I still have the receipt. A week later, I carried the tote to breakfast. Nothing dramatic happened. Nobody recognized me. Nobody planted jewelry in it. I ordered eggs. I read the newspaper. I left a generous tip. As I walked outside, I caught my reflection in the window. Same woman, same bag, completely different life. Kevin, the waiter from Astor House, emailed me once after everything became public through the legal proceedings. He wrote, "I always wondered if I did the right thing getting involved." I replied, "You did." Then I sent him something else. "You gave me information and let me decide what to do with it. That's more respect than people in my own family were giving me." He answered with a thumbs up. Very profound. I appreciated it. I never went back to Astor House. Not because I'm afraid of it, I just don't need to reclaim every room where something bad happened. Some places can stay in the past. Daniel tried contacting me twice after the divorce. The first message was long. It contained the words regret, pressure, marriage, misunderstanding, fear, and love. It did not contain the words "I chose to hurt you." I didn't answer. The second message came 3 months later. It was shorter. He said Christina's health had been affected by the stress, and asked whether I would consider writing a statement saying I believed she had acted impulsively rather than maliciously. I read it once, then deleted it. Christina had planted a $78,500 bracelet in my purse. She had filed an insurance claim before pretending to discover it missing. She had accused me of theft, and she had offered to soften the accusation if I transferred millions of dollars to her son. Impulsive was not the word. Planned was. The strangest part of selling Q-Lane is that people still assume the $18 million changed my life most. It didn't. Money changed practical things. It gave me choices. It gave me security. It let me help my employees. It gave me the luxury of not panicking over bills. I'm grateful for that, but the biggest change came from one sentence whispered by a waiter beside an empty chair. "I saw her put something in your purse." Because for years, people had been putting things into my life and expecting me to carry them. Daniel's resentment, Christina's expectations, their financial fantasies, their version of family, their belief that successful women owe compensation to everyone who tolerated their ambition. I kept carrying it, quietly, until that night. Then I picked up the bag and left. Not dramatically, not screaming. I didn't throw wine. I didn't expose anyone in the restaurant. I didn't even open the purse until I was somewhere safe. That decision probably saved me. Because if I had confronted Christina at the table, she would have cried. Daniel would have shouted. The bracelet might have been moved. The story might have become messy. Instead, I let them continue. They filed the claim. They sent the texts. They made the accusation. They emailed the demand. They created the record. Every step they took to trap me tightened the trap around themselves. I used to think strength meant responding quickly. Now I think sometimes strength is knowing when not to interrupt someone while they're proving exactly who they are. I sold an online business for $18 million. My husband thought that made me easier to exploit because there was suddenly a number he could point to. My mother-in-law thought my purse was a convenient place to hide a crime. They were both wrong. The money didn't make me powerful. The documentation did. The witness did. The timestamp did. The old messages did. And finally, my willingness to believe what the evidence showed me did. That last part was the most painful. You can have all the proof in the world and still waste years trying to explain it away, because accepting the truth means losing someone. Freedom started when I stopped negotiating with facts. My lesson is simple. When someone loves what they can get from you more than they respect what belongs to you, pay attention. Money doesn't create entitlement. It reveals it. And silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes, silence is the sound of someone saving the receipt. That's my story. An $18 million sale, a $78,500 bracelet, an $857 insurance claim, and one worn black purse taught me that the cleanest revenge is sometimes letting people finish the lie they started. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who has ever been underestimated. Tell me in the comments when you realized Daniel was part of the setup, and subscribe for more stories like this.